I suspect many folks know about Bomberman and the mountain of games with his name on it, but if you've been living under a rock for the last 35 years, look out, I'm about to blow it up. Hudson Soft developed Bomberman way back in 1983 for a number of Japanese home computers before it was ported to the NES a few years later, where it really caught traction around the world and was transformed into a prominent franchise thereafter. And that Bomberman franchise is all over the place and difficult to put a circle around. While the NES can confidently say it has at least 2 entries in the series on its platform, some even say Robo Warrior is a part of the franchise given that Hudson Soft developed it and some of the mechanics are similar, but all of that is debated. In fact, Robo Warrior is more attached to the Blaster Master series according to some others, which is a whole different topic for a different video. Interestingly, the Japanese version of Bomberman has a pretty direct reference to Lode Runner being the game's direct sequel. As for the other games in this series, the Game Boy got Atomic Punk and Bomberman, and the TurboGrafx got its own Bomberman title that has one of those unsettling Mega Man 1 styled covers. The titular small-time terrorist hit arcades in 1990 with Bomberman World, and then there was Bomberman 93 and 94 to follow, Super Bomberman 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the Super Nintendo and Super Famicom, Mega Bomberman on the Genesis, and on and on. Bomberman games and spin-offs released at a clip of about 2 or 3 a year up until 2010 when it all stopped, with a hulking catalog of about 70 total entries. Since then, as of 2021, only 2 more have been released. Super Bomberman R and R Online came to Switch, and those barely whelmed players and critics. Today we'll be looking at those first 2 that came out on the NES and kicked off the Bomberman craze that peaked as abruptly as it plummeted over the next 30 years. Bomberman is a bit unique in that it gets easier as you go. The point of the game is to navigate a maze of blocks while armed with bombs, blow up every enemy in the room, and find the door to exit. You begin with a single bomb, and I'll take this opportunity to bestow to you the most important tip for Bomberman: don't blow yourself up. That's also an important part of life. That protective suit Bomberman wears does exactly nothing against his own fiery explosions. He's just wearing that to satisfy OSHA requirements. At the beginning of the game, you're woefully underpowered, and the game can feel more difficult than it actually is, because you probably think that, like most video games, this one is only going to get more difficult. Well, the good news is, on each level, there is a power-up hidden in one of those bricks you're blowing to bits. You can get more bombs, you can get a larger reach on your bomb's flames, you can get a remote that allows you to choose when the bomb explodes as opposed to running off to hide and wait, you can get skates that help you move faster, you can get a power-up that lets you walk through the bricks, and you can eventually get a power-up that makes you invincible to your own flames. So in each level, as you accrue these power-ups, the game gets easier and easier because nothing else in the game really changes. You keep getting stronger, and the game stays the same way. I mean, for the most part. Some things do change. The game adds more bricks to explode and a few more enemies, but it never becomes too difficult once you are stacked with those power-ups. There are 50 stages in the game, and if you have gotten all the power-ups by like stage 6 or 7, you should be able to cruise so long as you don't explode yourself. You'll have to be aware of some of the enemies' behaviors. A few of them can walk through walls themselves, some are really fast, and all of them are frustratingly wily when it comes to dodging bombs. It's never wise to take chances here. Always put down a bomb and then go run behind a corner. You can't take too much time in the stages though, because each has a time limit, and that's where being slow and skateless with few bombs and short reach makes it difficult to start. But once you have your super fast skates and you're able to deploy a handful of bombs at once, you become hard to stop. Again, in each stage you have to kill all the enemies and then find the exit door by blowing up the bricks, and you can't go through the door until all the enemies have been vanquished first. If you accidentally bomb the door after it appears, you'll create more enemies, so don't do that. There's also no bonus for blowing up every brick on screen that I'm aware of, so there's no need to do more than is required. Once everything is dead and you have found the power-up and you've uncovered the door, then you can move on. Since the game is long, and honestly can get pretty boring after a certain point even if you are successful, you can get a password to continue if you lose all your lives. This comes at a price. You'll lose a number of your power-ups. The game can really turn upside down if you've been cruising for about 20 levels and then screw around and explode yourself. All you keep if you die is your extra bombs and the range of your flames. You'll lose your ability to walk through walls and your remote control. If you mess around and die, you're going to have a hard time rebuilding your arsenal in the latter stages, so don't get cocky. There are bonus levels that break up the action, and in those your own bombs can't hurt you, so you can have all the fun you want by dropping bombs and running around and accruing points, and with enough of those you can get an extra life. Just don't make a habit of running through your own bomb fire here and kill yourself like a moron in the next real stage. Yes, there is a shoehorn story here. Thanks for asking. Bomberman is a bomb-making robot. Imagine that. And he's been enslaved underground by quote-unquote evil forces. He hears a rumor one day, as robots are always gossiping and sharing rumors, and the rumor was that if he reached the Earth's surface, he could become a human. So Bomberman goes rogue and starts bombing his way up and out of here so he can escape the clutches of evil and gain a human soul. As for music, you better like this track for a long time, because that's what you're going to get. The second Bomberman on the NES came out a long time after the first one, so as you would expect, and can see here, it took on a ton of graphical improvements. But that's about it, really. Not much else has changed with the Bomberman formula. You still start out with one weak bomb and must gradually build up your power-up arsenal as you go, while trying not to die and become weak again. The stages are more varied here. There are 6 different worlds with 8 stages each. The worlds vary from wooded areas to warehouse-type areas, watery areas, and more. It's much more interesting to look at than the gray and green you see for the entire first game. The first 4 stages of each world is a single screen, opposed to the first game where all play areas were the same size and extended a screen or two left or right. The single screens here make for a tighter play area, but stages feel quicker and more interesting. The second 4 stages in each world are larger and more like those ones from Bomberman 1. Most of the enemies will be familiar, but a few have developed some aggravating habits, like one that can disappear and teleport, and then reappear, catching you off guard. Like the first game, though, the better you are at holding onto your power-ups, the better off you'll be for the long haul. Bomberman 2 is a touch more difficult than its predecessor, thanks to these much-needed wrinkles, and even though there is an ounce of challenge here, it is still a relatively easy NES game by NES game difficulty standards. The story here is much different from the first. Our Bomberman from the first game is living his life as a human now, presumably as Lode Runner. So in Bomberman 2, you are a different Bomberman robot, but you were framed for robbing a bank, and you have to break out of jail and bring the Bomberman who framed you to justice. Oh my. Passwords and continues make a comeback here, and there are a few new modes. Where the first game had no multiplayer capability, Bomberman 2 is where the series' multiplayer legacy kicks off. You can play a versus mode against one other Bomberman where you scoot around the board and try to deftly kill each other in a blast. You can also extend that fun for up to 3 people if you have the NES 4 score, allowing for you and 2 friends to go at it. It's no doubt one of the funnest multiplayer experiences on the system, and if I had 2 friends to play with, I'd have proven that to you here. Thankfully, Hudson Soft decided to add more than just one song to the soundtrack here. Most worlds have their own unique music, or at the very least it's not repeated over and over in brain-bursting succession for 50 boring levels. This music is rather nice, and much less grating. Comparing these 2 games, there's no question which is the better option. Bomberman 2 did a great job of keeping everything fun about blowing up mazes looking for doors from the first game. It made some great improvements to graphics, pacing, and multiplayer modes, thus making for a very solid sequel. Unfortunately, the second game is not as common as the first one, so if you've never played a Bomberman game before, but you're interested, the first game nearly grows on trees and does a great job of hooking you to the series. It is, after all, the foundation of the tried-and-true loop that spun into a franchise with over 70 games in it. I referenced many other Bomberman spin-offs and sequels in the intro, and while I haven't played them all, I've played a few, and most are fun to pick up and play without any other introductory experience. What is your favorite Bomberman game, and which was your first? Alright, well that does it for Bomberman and Bomberman 2 on the NES. As always, don't explode yourself, and thanks for watching.